Hey everyone, it's Angela Stevens with the podcast Refocus with Angela. And I've got such an exciting guest today. It's actually going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of humorous things, so you want to stay tuned. But I have got Dave Delaney with me today. He is a communication expert. He's a veteran podcaster. He's the CEO of Future Forth, which is a leadership and communication firm based in Nashville. He talks a lot about different things of compassion, empathy, inclusivity, and communication styles. But he's also the podcast host for ADHD Wise Squirrels. So we're going to jump right in. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Angela.
You're welcome. So, okay, everybody's going to go, okay, ADHD Wise Squirrels podcast. Okay, what is that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is a podcast I started last year for late diagnosed adults with ADHD. So basically people like me and you, right?
And
So
yeah,
like
exactly.
being a late diagnosed adult. So I was diagnosed last year, and in true ADHD wise squirrel or ADHD form, being very creative and getting very hyper focused and all the good things, I jumped right in and created Wise Squirrels as a website to
Yeah.
share my own experiences. I'm kind of an early adopter in social and content marketing and all that good stuff. And so I've been blogging and podcasting, I started podcasting in '05. So, it's been
I love it.
almost 20 years. And so, yeah, naturally I just started a podcast interviewing ADHD, subject matter experts, ADHD coaches, medical
Yeah.
professionals, and then also like high achievers with ADHD. So the podcast just came from my diagnosis, really.
I love it. I love it. So, we talked a little bit before the show about our late diagnosis. And so, I was diagnosed at age 45, and you were diagnosed at what age?
50. Yeah. Last year, before my 51st birthday. So I'm 51 now, be
Okay.
52 in like a week.
Yeah. And so we wanted to, for the audience, we wanted to share a little bit about that because as I travel with our company, Refocus the Creative Office, I meet a lot of people who will say, I think I've got it. How do I, what do I do if I think I have it? So we want to talk. So first of all,
Yeah.
I'm going to share how I was diagnosed and what happened, but can you share a little bit about how you figured it out for you?
Yeah. So there's a long version and a short version, but I'll give you the medium or
Yeah.
shortish. Excuse me, which is I was in a mastermind with a couple of guys. One of them I know quite well, the other guy I didn't know very well. And we would meet once a week and talk about our businesses and kind of, they're both entrepreneurs and so on. And we were the other guy didn't know me very well. So one day he texted me out of the blue and he's like, "Do you have ADHD?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "I think you do," because he does. And so I went to my doctor, and it wasn't the first trip. The backstory here is I was actually diagnosed in 2016 after seeing a therapist, or a psychologist. However, I didn't get the memo.
Well, we're all
Somehow,
we're all in denial for a little bit, right? Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't remember what happened there. I really don't. It's
Mhm.
very strange. But because I was there in 2016 because of a lot of anxiousness and stress, running a business. And my wife is a school teacher and has, taught children of all sorts over the years, of course. So she was always like, "You have ADHD, Dave." It's like the moral of the story here is always listen to your spouse is really the best advice I could give you. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, long story short, I went to my doctor last year. He did some testing, and then he said, "Hang on," and he fired up his computer and went up into my charts, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you were diagnosed in 2016." And I'm like, "Okay, great."
Yeah.
So
And when
whatever.
you did
What's a few more
that,
years?
you had gone, did you get testing? Like, did you see a psychologist, have to go through a lot of interview questions? I mean, just for
Yeah.
our viewers that don't even know how that process goes, how did they do it with you?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, in 2016, I saw a psychologist. We had two sessions that were I don't remember, about an hour, maybe 2 hours each. And he took a lot of notes and asked me a lot of questions. And then I did like like a written sort of assessment. Kind of went through that, like a personality assessment, Myers-Briggs type of deal. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then at the end of that, I mean, it was it was pretty clear. And it's funny too, because my mom keeps everything, and she kept all my old report cards from when I was a kid. And so after my diagnosis last year, my wife and I pulled the box out of the closet, blew the dust off of it, and started reading the comments from my teachers from like, grade school, from like grade
Okay,
one
question.
through
I'm interrupting you.
interrupt.
What did your teacher say? Because I've got mine. What did she say about you? Any
Oh, I mean, it
statement?
was textbook. Like it was like if you were looking at a textbook of how to diagnose somebody with ADHD, it was like, uh, first of all, I mean, the benefit, the positive stuff was like he's a smart kid, he learns quickly, blah blah blah. He would do great if he paid more attention in class. He was, I was a class clown, so I was always disrupting the class, cracking jokes, making people laugh, doing that. So, yeah, they were basically like, he needs to pay attention more. He needs to do his homework. He needs to study. He gets distracted easily. Like, he needs to stay seated in his seat. Like all the tick tick tick. Like reading it, it's just like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
then yeah,
I only had one sentence, and my mother always reminds me of it. And it was, Angela is persistent. And I'm not sure why it was so funny. I just remember that like
yeah,
everything. But so, okay. So when I was diagnosed, similar situation, but my son, many people know the story of my son. He was diagnosed in the 5th grade. I was diagnosed at age 45, which
yeah.
created our other company, which is Refocus, the creative office. And so what was interesting is I would drive somewhere and I would forget why I was there. I would forget who I was supposed to see, and
Yeah.
this kept going on, and I'll never forget. It was really a sad day. My husband sat me down on the deck, and he looks at me, and he said, "This is different. You're different. Something's going on." And I was so
Yeah.
upset that he would think that. And then it was kind of a reality check, like maybe I should. And I did. And sure enough, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Because I
Yeah.
tested just as high. And what I did, they sent me to a psychologist. I got through the test. They actually put me through a lot of computer tests as well.
Mhm.
And then found out, that's why. So, but it's kind of a relief because in a way, our parents didn't know, right, back then. And they didn't know how to help us, right, when we were younger like that. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a blessing to know it. So, but
Yeah.
if somebody's interested, let's say you meet somebody and they say, "Hey, I think I've got ADHD." What do
Yeah.
you recommend on the process of how they go about it?
Yeah. The first thing I say is if you go to ysquirrels.com, I have a free assessment on the site and it's a
Mm,
link to the free assessment. So
oh,
like I
great.
don't see the results. I don't get any of that information. It goes elsewhere. So I don't see any of those results. So I always encourage people to do that first. Um, but from there, and even regardless of the outcome, these like online assessments, should be taken with a grain of salt, but it's a good starting point. But most important thing, regardless, is go talk to your doctor. And one pro tip I will give you is when you go meet with your doctor, before asking your doctor about this, ask them what their thoughts are on ADHD
Yeah.
and see what they say. Because there are still quacks out there, and I use the term loosely. I might say something else, but there are doctors out there still who don't believe in ADHD. So
Right.
there were poor people, there were bad mechanics, there were bad cooks at restaurants, there were bad doctors. So it's very important to make sure that your doctor, because maybe your doctor is great, and you've got a great relationship, but you've never talked about this before, so make sure you ask your doctor first, like what their thoughts are on ADHD, and
Yeah.
let them answer that, and hopefully the answer will be positive, and then you can go into to
Y-
ask about getting the testing done.
That's a really great point because the reason I say that is because in a lot of areas there are, especially for kids, there's a shortage of psychiatrists, and they have to see a psychiatrist usually to be diagnosed. And there's a shortage. So what they've been doing is a lot of payer systems, insurance companies, they have created this. Will train the primary care doctor to educate you and to be educated on ADHD, and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. So I agree with you. It's always okay to get a second opinion, right?
Mhm.
And do your research. Find somebody that's really good at knowing whether you've got ADHD or not, right? I
Yeah,
think
and there's
that's
often, and if they've been in the business for a long time, like as a medical professional, they may reference it as ADD.
Yeah.
Somebody who's had ADHD for a long time will call it ADD but to be clear on that, because a lot of people confuse it, I did too. It's the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
ADD got renamed ADHD. So it is the same thing, just to be clear. So
Exactly.
when you hear ADD referenced, know that the person probably was diagnosed earlier or studied about it earlier. And so that's why they say ADD and not ADHD.
So let's talk about the positives. So people that have ADHD, not, I wouldn't say, as particularly, but they're brilliant, right? I hate to say I'm brilliant, but if they're, it's like with kids, if they're good at one thing or two, they're really good, and listen to your children, follow their path. But as adults, we're very talented, because you got to remember 20 years ago when my son was diagnosed, it was taboo. You didn't say ADHD medication. They were going to walk sideways. It's so much better communicated now than it was then.
Mm.
However, today, we know that people with ADHD they might drive you crazy, but they're really talented. And so what makes you different because you've got ADHD, or what are you really good at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very good at coming up with creative ideas, and I'm excellent at executing on those ideas.
Mhm.
So like at the starting point of concept strategies and all that stuff, I'm very good at that. And then like Wise Girls is a perfect example, right? Like creating a website and podcasts, I practically did it overnight. Like I just went, I did everything myself.
Yeah.
So getting hyper focused, on things that you enjoy, like, and that's a pretty common
Yeah.
ADHD thing, is that you can get, and this is often a confusing point too, because people think, well, I'm not hyperactive, so I don't have ADHD. But the
Yeah.
thing is, as you become an adult, you don't mask it so much as you find like coping mechanisms, and you kind of unknowingly kind of redirect the tendencies or tendency of ADHD, let's say, and then you jump in other things. So for example, yeah, hyper focused, I get hyper focused on creating things and executing on them. So yeah, I'm very good at that.
I always joke. I wake up in the morning and I tell my husband, I'm like, oh my God, I've got this great idea and you've got to listen to this. And he's like, can I just have like 5 minutes? Like just five, right? And
Yeah.
so, but that I come up, and that's sometimes when I have the best ideas ever, right? And I always
Hmm.
say, write those down, like write them down. And we have a notebook you can purchase on our company, but you have to write them down because they'll go away, right? So,
Yes.
so for me, what I'm good at is, I owned a business, 30 years, of recruiting, right? And so I created our company, time to refocus.com. And then it went to this podcast. I have another podcast, and I still have my search firm so I can do this. And I never really realized how, and I thought everybody else was like that, but everybody
Yeah.
else, it drives them absolutely crazy, right? That I can
Yeah.
think and I can change, and I expect them to keep up with me, right? Back and forth. And
Yeah.
I got a great team, by the way, that does that really well. So, and but it's positive. So let's talk about family real quick. So,
Yeah.
so suggestions for family members that have an adult in their family that has ADHD. Advice for them.
Well, I mean, first of all, ADHD is highly hereditary.
It is.
And like we're talking like high 70s, low 80%. Of course,
Example, I'm a
I'm not a
perfect example. My son, right?
right,
Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, and I always like preface that with like, and I say it on my podcast, that like on Wise Squirrels, that I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet. So just be clear about that.
Yeah.
But from what I've learned, yeah, it's highly hereditary. So if you have ADHD as a parent, like there's a likeliness, pretty high likeliness, that one or more of your kids might have ADHD as well, and vice versa. Like if your kids have ADHD, then chances are you or your spouse might, or partner might have ADHD. And then you could start thinking about like, oh, my parents, and like all of that, as I do. So yeah, I think it's important to, yeah, it's important for family members, neurotypical family members, those without ADHD. Uh, it's beneficial for them to educate themselves a little bit. I'd say like learn about
Yeah.
ADHD so you can understand. Hopefully you have good communication skills with your partner so that you can openly discuss this stuff. And I mean, I was reading, the first book I read when I was diagnosed was Your Brain's Not Broken. Dr. Tamara Rossier.
Yeah.
Rossier.
Yeah.
And she was been a guest on my podcast, and probably the most popular episode. Actually, we had a hoot.
Yeah.
We laughed our heads off about stuff. But she, in that book, you know, she wrote things, and as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God, I do that. Or, oh my God, that's why I do that. Like chewing my lips. I chronically chew my lips. I've always done it,
So,
but
okay,
I
yeah,
didn't
we
realize
want to
it's
talk about that.
stimming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like things like that, like I started realizing all these different things and these tendencies. And so I was like texting my wife, like, oh, you know how I do this?
Yeah.
Like learning this stuff. So but I think
Exactly.
having a very open open communication with your partner is important for
Yeah.
all that.
My son used to just
And
drive me
kids.
crazy. He would just like chew his fingernails all the time. Just and I was like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, you know. And but
Yeah.
we all have it. And so we were talking earlier. So we were gonna openly share our insights to the world, right? And we
Yep.
agreed, what are some of the things that drive our staff members, our family members, our kids? What do we do that drives them nuts? All right, you go
Mm-hmm.
first.
Okay. So for my wife, I drive her nuts because I talk too much. And with ADHD too, like I wake up in the morning. She wakes up like like a normal, but you know, a normie, the neurotypical, right? She wakes up and she's groggy and slow. I wake up, I'm like, come on, I just completely recharged overnight. I haven't even had coffee yet or anything.
Yeah.
So I drive her crazy with like just I talk a lot. And also in addition to that, it's difficult too because like I work from home and I'm extroverted. So I wrote a book about networking called New Business Networking. I'm all about like networking and relationships and
Yeah, yeah,
connecting with
yeah.
people
Yeah.
and communicating. And I say that because I work from home alone and so, well, with Peggy
I was
as
gonna
well.
say there's a
Yeah.
cat. If you're
No,
listening to wait, if you're
dog.
listening to this, oh, it's a dog? I can't say.
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
listening to this, I see
Yes.
this cute little animal behind him. What is it?
She's a mini Aussie, a mini Australian Shepherd, and she's absolutely adorable. And she curses like a sailor, though I have to say, like she's cute, but don't let
Okay,
that
did
fool
you
you.
teach her that?
I'm not going to comment on that. No comment.
Cute.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So So I say I'm home alone all day, and I'm extroverted, and my wife is introverted, and she's a school teacher. So she gets home from work and she's exhausted. She
Yeah.
just needs to unplug, go to the room, read a book, relax. But I'm like, hey, come, come. Like I'm dying to talk to somebody when she gets home. So
Yeah.
that drives her crazy. What about you? What do you
So,
do?
well, first of all, I want to make a comment. So, pets, anyone that has family members that have kids, older adults, especially if they have ODD or if they have anxiety, pets are amazing. I am a bad mother because I'm allergic to pets. My son wanted one forever, and but he couldn't get one. And so, I was divorced at the time when he was little. Many people know that, but his dad had a cat. And it was really comforting to him. It was really soothing for him. And my mother's getting one. He's like on cloud nine, right? And he's
Uh,
he's moved out. He's 23, but animals have a way of calming you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I drive her crazy too. Like I drive my kids crazy. I drive Peggy crazy I was going to say with the kids. And this is an important point too. Like so I would always finish all their food on the plates. So like we would eat out and I would eat all the chicken fingers and I would eat all the fries, like anything they were leaving, I would eat. And growing up, or not even growing up, but just as an adult, my wife and I have been together like 25 years. I used to do that with her. Like we would eat out somewhere and I'd finish her leftovers all the time. There would never be leftovers like with a meal with me.
Yeah.
But I always thought it was because my dad made me eat everything on my plate and I wasn't
Yeah.
allowed to leave the table until I
Yeah.
finished everything. And it was
Yeah.
brutal. And so I always blamed him for that. And I
Yeah.
think there is some of that there. However, what I've learned since my diagnosis is the excessive tendencies with ADHD, and one can be very excessive in things, and that is what leads to a shorter, up to 13-year less life expectancy for undiagnosed, untreated ADHD,
Yeah.
because excessiveness is very common, and so because it triggers dopamine, and we lack dopamine, so that's how addictions are so common with ADHDers, like into alcohol or drugs
It
or
is.
smoking or
Yeah.
whatever.
Hmm.
And so for me at the time, it was certainly food. Like I would just eat everything, and it would drive the kids crazy. So they're 17 and 18 now. So I
It's
resist, and I'm
it's
medicated in therapy. So that
That's
helps.
interesting because my husband of that I married when my son was 10, he's like that. He was raised by family. You eat your dinner, you don't leave the table. And I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, because the kid, sometimes with kids, they're anxious, right? And my son used to tap. He would take a pen and he would just tap like this. And it would drive everybody crazy, including me. And then he would also clap, and it would just drive me crazy. But you need patience, right? You go with them. I know one
Yeah,
thing, my son would take the end of the table and he would jump up and down. And so one day I just got up and I started jumping up and down with him, and he laughed and he stopped. So you kind of have
yeah,
to work with them, you got to listen. But so okay, all right. So for me, the things I do that drive my family crazy, I have one big thing I do and it drives everyone crazy. I've tried so hard to stop it. I leave drawers open. I leave cabinet drawers open, and I leave doors, and not physical doors, but like cabinet doors, drawers. And
yeah.
I did that for years. Didn't know that that's a common thing with people with ADHD. And I Googled it, and it was like especially women were like, oh my gosh, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do. So come to find out, my son moves out, right? He does it too. It's
Ah,
so funny. So when
that's
my
hilarious.
husband
Yeah.
is like, "You didn't shut the cabinet door," and I go, "Oh, well, I replaced my son. When he moved out, I took his place." And I said, "How lucky were you that you got a wife and a child with ADHD?" And said he never had kids. It was great. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. That's hilarious.
some of the other things, like I said, when you said like people will chew, a lot of kids will chew on their clothing or their t-shirt or what are some of the other things that kids do or that adults do? The tapping for us was a big deal.
Yeah,
And so I'm just trying to think of things so that people think they're normal and our family has these issues too, right? And
yeah, yeah,
just things like that, and not
yeah.
finishing, homework sometimes. Okay, I have a question. Oh, I've got a good one for you. Are you ready?
Yes, yeah,
Can
yeah,
you tell we're both ADHD? We're like, "Oh, okay."
yeah.
Okay, so, but okay, so I heard this podcast. I can't remember the guy who was talking about it, but he talked about piles. So in business, do you
Mm,
have piles
piles
of,
of
like,
like,
paper? Like, with
oh yeah, yeah,
paper.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Paper.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so we're bad at it, right? So we make piles of our paper, right?
yeah,
And you would think a normal person would take those papers and go through them, right? We don't, right? We just forget about them, right? Do you do
yeah.
that?
Well, no, actually, I mean, I do. Yeah, like my desk drawers, for example, become just insane.
Yeah.
Like just all sorts of stuff. So what I do, not with any like, I don't do it like on the last day of the month. I don't like have a frequency with it. But what I do is I actually kind of enjoy the process, which is dump it on the floor, put on a podcast in my headset or in my AirPods, and then just I go through it, and I'm just like one pile for garbage, one or recycling or whatever, one pile for, keep it, one pile for goodwill, and just kind of go through it, and then a couple little sub piles. But I do that, yeah, from time to time, just to kind of go through things.
Yeah.
But I don't do it enough. And yeah, yeah,
And in business, especially I have three businesses, so I'll have a pile here, pile here. So
yeah.
for me, I got to tell you, one of the things I did two things that really helped me. So when I was 45, I had three businesses, and my life was just kind of chaotic, and I knew I had to make change. I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
I hired myself an ADHD business coach.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
have one too.
he was in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and best money I ever spent. He taught me how I knew how to delegate, but he taught me how to delegate properly. And then he
Mm-hmm.
taught me how to be prepared, more prepared. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget one time he said, "Angela, who's the CEO of your company?" And I said, "I am." And he goes, "You're not acting like it." And I was like,
Right on.
"Ouch." But then he said, "Here's why." And he gave me steps, and then I changed it. It changed my world. So
Yeah.
sometimes, I don't care if you have ADHD or not. Sometimes we all get into a point in life, right, where we could use some help,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I offer coaching now. Like I don't claim to be an ADHD coach or anything,
Mhm.
but I used to do coaching to help. Like I was a speaker for Google for about 6 years. And so I taught thousands of people how to grow their businesses online. And I've worked in digital marketing forever and things like that. So I started coaching clients years ago. And then I moved on to doing different things, but I've just started actually coaching like at Y Squirrels. There's a link there if anybody's interested in just having a chat of helping, especially helping entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, solopreneurs, really helping people, grow their businesses and things. And now knowing what I know about ADHD, if they do have ADHD, I can definitely help them with that too. So yeah, it's a big thing. And also Canadians always help because I'm also Canadian.
Are you? Oh, I didn't know that. You know what I heard about Canadians the other day? I heard they are some of the most nicest people in the world. And they have, I got to think of the word, they have a sense of, um, I forget the word, but it's bringing you in and making you feel at home.
Mm,
And it'll come
yeah,
to me, but
yeah,
it was lovely. It was, and so every time I meet with Canadians, I get the same, and just like you, I get the same feeling. So there's
yeah.
something special about you guys. I don't know, but it's really
We're good.
special.
Well, yeah, so I studied improv comedy with Second City because I've done a million different things because I have ADHD for
Oh
those
my
who
gosh, we
I,
have more in common than you know.
and
Okay, I'm getting to
and
that. Okay.
so yeah, and that's part of like actually that's part of the training that I do in workshops and communication presentations and things. I speak a fair amount about improv and I do some training related to that definitely is inspired by my experiences, performing and studying improv.
Yeah.
But I say that because with Canada, my dad bought me a book when I was a kid because I've always been a class clown and a joker and humorous in some way.
That's what makes us so fun, right? We're the best. We are so fun at parties, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
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 Until I black out drunk, but
Yeah.
luckily, 4 years sober.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, 1,400 days today, actually.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Oh, very
Yeah,
nice.
thank you very much. But I mentioned that because yeah, my dad bought me this book about Canadian humor because there's so many amazing Canadian comedians. Uh, you name it, like Schitt's Creek, SCTV, like Lorne Michaels running, SNL, and John Candy, Guilt, all the people. Anyway, and the book was about why Canadians are so funny. And there's like the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival, which is like the biggest comedy festival in the world. And this book, the thesis made sense to me. It made complete sense. So the gist here is that America, and I'm totally generalizing, of course, but Americans, as far as humor goes, tend to be more generalizing, tend to be more like observational with some storytelling in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then
Oh.
British comedians, because Canada gets a lot of inspiration from the UK and British styles, and my mom is British as well, so there's
Mhm.
that. But Canadians or British humor is more like self-deprecating, like taking the piss, as they say. So it's more like making fun of yourself and that kind of thing. And so Canadians are like, it's like a chocolate and peanut butter scenario. So that they get like the storytelling combination with the taking the piss and that kind of side of it. And also like the general, observation stuff. And thus Canadians are pretty damn funny. Kids in the
I
hall.
love that. I love that. So we were talking about coaching, and you coach,
Yes.
I coach in a
Mm-hmm.
very specific area. I coach on careers, like for career individuals. And
Yeah,
so,
great.
I coached a young adult who I'll give you this brief scenario. He was 23 and he has Asperger's and he has ADHD and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. And he had lost his job. Okay.
Mm.
And couldn't get another one, couldn't get another one. And we changed it. I changed his mindset on the type of jobs he was looking for and really helping him. And I can't get specific because I don't want to spread too much
Yeah.
information, but it was like day and night for him. For the reason that he lost his job is the reason he got a new job, because we changed it.
Mm,
So the reason that he got fired was the reason that we turned it around. And I said, let's take a new spin on that. And so he was protecting the company without saying much more. And so now he's working in loss prevention and he's
that's
so
awesome.
happy, and he's living at home and he's going to work every day and he's saved 27,000 in 6 months. I am just on fire for him. So I do that. I coach CEOs, I coach young adults, and I love it
Yeah.
only because I've done recruiting for 30 years. So we all have that special side to us as well, so
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I want to ask you, because everybody's going to go, wait a minute, wait, did he say Google? Did he work
Yeah.
for Google? Right? So tell us a little bit about that, because that's so interesting that you've got that background.
Yeah. So I wasn't a Google employee. They were a client, but what happened was they were struggling communicating the some of their products and services. So some of the features, like how to use YouTube to grow your business, or how to use Google Ads or analytics or SEO, SEM, and all of these digital marketing things. And being an expert in communication, both online and offline, I know a lot about digital marketing and content marketing and all that good stuff. And so they put together sort of a team of about 10 different speakers, trainers, and I do a lot of presentations and workshops. So, and they brought me on to basically travel the US and Canada some and represent Google. So I would go, you know, full disclosure to the audience that I don't work for Google, but I am wearing their t-shirt and I'm about to teach you some, how to grow your business using Google. Yeah, it was tons of fun. I did that for about almost 6 years, like 5.5 years, in addition to running my own business, futureforth.com, which is, helping people improve how they communicate. So yeah, Google was having a problem with communicating and they hired me.
I love it. So you are you're techie, right? You're IT, you're techie, you're what I'm not, I'm learning. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
by the way, I want to go back. You were improv in Second
Yeah,
City, right? Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm a theater major. Okay. And I've been
Nice.
in
Yeah,
films as well. And I
nice.
have a stage name, so it's different because I didn't want it to cross over. But I've been in feature films. So
That's great. Good for you.
so the cool thing is what we're trying to show you out there as an audience, that if you feel like you're different, first of all, and whether you're 20, 16, or 70, if
Yeah,
you feel like you're different, embrace it. It's once you
yeah,
embrace it, it's the best thing you can ever give yourself, right? And
absolutely. Yes.
and if you have problems with your family, get counseling, get coaching, do
Yeah,
what you have to do, right? To bring the better self out of you, right?
right,
And there's a
right.
lot of different ways you can do that. So so the other thing I wanted to say is, when people, it's funny, I'll go up to people and I'll say, we'll be talking, I'll be like, oh, I have ADHD. I know that's a big shocker, and they just burst out in tears. So when I'm presenting, I do that. They laugh so hard because they've already picked it up, right? So that
Yeah,
they know it, embrace it, because, like I said, some of the most brilliant people out there
yeah.
have been diagnosed with ADHD. So,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I
and when I'm speaking, I do that. Like I'll share that too. Regardless, like doesn't really matter which presentation I'm doing. Um, but I do one keynote that I wanted to mention too, which is it's called the Root Down, and it's an ADHD inspired process and presentation to know, respect, and connect yourself. And the idea with it is it's 3 sections. One, better understanding yourself, knowing your strengths, your superpowers. And I have a process for that. The second section is about self-respect, self-love, self-awareness, and self-acceptance. And then the third part is about connecting yourself, meaning meeting people, finding your people. And that fits into some of my book, New Business Networking, a little bit about the networking aspects,
yeah,
but also the loneliness epidemic has caused like the like doctor the ex or Surgeon General Vivek Murphy wrote a book all about this, and they've done studies to find that the adverse effects of loneliness is like smoking 16 cigarettes a day.
yeah, hmm,
So it's literally killing people.
yeah.
And I felt it too. I mean, I certainly. So that third section about connecting yourself is partly about that and ways to help with that. And the Root Down now, as the presentation that I've been doing for conferences and for associations and companies, um, it has inspired my next book. And so I'm sort of in the middle of the book now of sort of writing that book.
Awesome. Good for
But
you.
that's
Good
going to
for
be,
you.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about the
I'm
book.
so blessed to know you. It's
Yeah,
exciting.
likewise.
I was telling, it was funny. I forgot we weren't recording. We have to tell this story. So
We
I'm
aren't recording.
sitting
Oh,
in a
or
staff
yeah, yeah, yeah.
meeting. I'm sitting in a staff meeting one time, and one of my staff members, Gina, which I'll mention, and she said, has anybody listened to that squirrel podcast? And I'm like, what? And she's like, squirrels. Well, now let's go back for a minute. The squirrel idea came from the movie Up, right? I mean, that was when
Yes.
everybody kind of understood it. So if you haven't
Yeah.
seen the cartoon movie Up, you'll understand it when we say squirrels. All right.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the movie Up, I highly recommend it. It's a great movie. It's a great family movie. It's an animated movie by Disney Pixar. I've just attached a picture of it. So enjoy. If you've got ADHD, you will totally understand it. So enjoy. So we were talking earlier, and I wanted to ask you this question because we asked this question to everyone we interview. Because I could talk to you again all day long, but on those days, we're all not focused. There's some days, and it's for us, it's every day, right? I do it, but no, seriously, for on those days when you're just having that odd day and you've got to be somewhere or you're presenting and you've got to have game on.
Yeah.
What is the music or the genre or the artist that you listen to that gives you game on?
Yeah, there's a band out of Victoria, British Columbia called No Means No, one word. And they
No,
have a song called Now.
now.
And the song Now always gets me going. They're an eclectic band. They're a rather unusual band, but yeah,
We're
they're great.
ADHD. We love that kind of stuff. As you know what,
Yeah.
if you're like me, I like all kinds of music,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
right? Because it can bring
Yeah.
you up, it can bring you down, it can bring you focused, it can bring you all over. So, but
Oh yeah.
either way, like I said, I think you're amazing. I think you're so
Likewise.
talented.
Thanks.
And so I wanted just to let everyone know again. So his podcast is ADHD Wise Squirrels. You can find him at wisesquirrels.com. And for Future Fourth, is there a website for that?
Yeah, futurefourth.com.
And that's future and then FORTH.com.
Yeah,
So,
if you spell it wrong, I also own the other domain.
okay, there we go. Perfect. All right. Well, check it out. And thank you again so much for your time today. I graciously appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. I invite everybody to check out Wise Squirrels and let me know what you think. I would love